What is going on, everybody? And welcome back to a new segment on the channel that I'm calling Nate's Favorites, the segment on my channel where I pick one of my favorite movies and talk about it in great detail. And there's obviously a very specific reason as to why I chose this movie to do as a part of the segment now. And that is because Alien Romulus was released this past weekend. And depending on when this review gets released, I may or may not have seen the movie yet. I'm not 100% sure when it's going to work out for my schedule. But regardless, I'm planning on watching the entire Alien franchise, and I wanted to start with Ridley Scott's original, which just so happens to be one of my favorite horror films ever made. And I've always wanted to do a review of this movie. I've always wanted to talk about it in detail, and I thought that this would be a perfect time because of the release of that movie, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it with you today. Alien is directed by Ridley Scott. During its return to Earth, commercial spaceship Nostromo intercepts a distress signal from a distant planet. When a three-member team of the crew discovers a chamber containing thousands of eggs on a planet, a creature inside one of the eggs attacks an explorer. The entire crew is unaware of the impending nightmare set to descend upon them when the alien parasite planted inside its unfortunate host is birthed. So yeah, this is one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and despite the fact that this thing is over 40 years old at this point, it still holds up, not only visually, but aesthetically, tonally. Everything about this movie is still horrifying. And Ridley Scott's execution of the material is just phenomenal. I think this is everything that makes horror such a special genre. It truly is a movie that withstands the test of time because it's a very simple premise when you get down to it. When you think about this movie, we were introduced to the crew on the ship. We don't know that Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is going to be the star of the franchise 4 films later. But it's just this group of people who are essentially like space truckers. They're like going to pick up this material, load it onto this ship, and take it back home. They're awoken from their cryo sleep because they're like, hey, we've discovered something nearby, and because of our contract, we are required to go check it out. And they go there. They're not all scientists. They're not all these like super geniuses. They're just people doing this job. They go to examine these eggs. One of the eggs has what we know now as a face hugger, jumps on one of their faces, implants an egg inside one of them, and then a xenomorph is born. And I think what's so interesting about that is it's so simplistic. Like just people in space in the future on this trip, and then something terrible happens to them. But what makes it so amazing is the way Ridley Scott builds characters and makes us care about what's going to happen to these people, because there's not these enormous exposition dumps about who each and every one of these people are, because there doesn't have to be. What makes it so amazing is you get that beautiful long take opening sequence of us being introduced inside the spaceship. We see where we're going to be for the long period of the movie, and they're all awoken from their cryo sleep, and we get this really amazing intro sequence of them just eating and goofing off with each other at this table. And we're showcased very early on, hey, these are just real people doing a job, and something terrible is going to happen to them. And because you don't need all that exposition of like who they are on Earth and where they come from and who their families are, it's just through the simple dialogue and the interactions with one another that makes it easy to attach yourself onto the characters. And I think that's just amazing filmmaking, because there's so many movies now where you'll watch horror films where there's little to no characterization, and it's just impossible to care about what's going on. But these people are characterized so early on by solely their interactions. And obviously that's due to the fantastic performances from a lot of these legends that are in this movie. I mean, Sigourney Weaver, all these years later, just has done incredible film after incredible film. She's just such a talented actress, and she's great in this. I mean, you look at someone like John Hurt, who is incredible. Ian Holm, Yaphet Kotto is great in this movie. Tom Skerritt, Veronica Cartwright, Harry Dean Stanton, just everyone in this movie, like all incredible actors in their respective fields that do a phenomenal job. And the chemistry between these guys, it's just so natural. Like you can feel this long trip they've been on together, and obviously they're traveling a great distance, and they're put in cryo sleep so that way they don't have to experience all that time of travel. But they've clearly spent plenty of time together doing this job, and that's what makes it so believable. I love the way that this movie is shot. The spaceship feels so lived in and it feels so real. That's what I miss so much now about practical set design, because so many big budget movies now are shot in rooms with green screen, and sometimes there will be practical set pieces intermingled with the green screen. But when you can build these sets by hand, which if you've ever seen shots of what it looked like when Ridley Scott crafted the hallways of this spaceship, it's just insane to think about the amount of time and effort and energy put into crafting each and every one of these sets. And because it feels so lived in, it makes it feel so much more authentic, and it's very confined. Like the spaceship itself is huge, but these hallways are really tight. And like thinking about running away from a creature in this spaceship, where it's not like you can just run out and leave. It's like you're trapped on board. This thing is going to be hunting you down, and the most you can do is hide or try to kill it. And I think that that's what makes this movie so incredible, is building up that area and making you as an audience member think about each and every place inside of this spaceship and the difficulty of survival in this specific situation. I love the look of the xenomorph here. I love when it's in its like infant stage. The face hugger is horrifying. It's crazy to think of what was pulled off practically here before CGI or any computer generated effects existed. You had to work within your limitations, and the things in this movie, they're still horrifying. Some of the xenomorph moments are a little bit more aged, especially when it's a guy in a costume. There's a couple of scenes in this that are a little dated, but I think because of the way Ridley Scott uses shadows and hides the creature for majority of the movie, a lot of it still looks horrifying. And I think that it's because of working within those limitations. I think the most brilliant film when it comes to practical effects, in my opinion, is John Carpenter's The Thing. And it does so much of what makes this movie special. It like hides things when it needs to be hidden and showcases the best of the practical effects when they know it's going to look great. And that's what makes Alien so fantastic. The chest burster scene, to this day, despite not having CGI technology, it looks real and it looks horrifying. And the genuine reaction of the cast members makes it all the more terrifying. And when the xenomorph's out running around and you see it just in like all these little spaces, or the moments where it's like the camera is focusing on like the teeth or like the extension coming out of its mouth, it's just crazy to think that over 40 years ago that they were able to pull this stuff off. And this movie is an exercise in patience, because little things are introduced to you throughout the movie. It's not like, oh, right away, alien on the ship, we've got to run, we've got to fight. It's like, no, we're going to build this world up, build up these characters, and just have little by little introduced to you throughout the movie, so that when it becomes really bombastic and intense in the tail end, the last 45 minutes of the movie, it's earned because of all that atmosphere. And that's what so many horror movies nowadays, I feel like, lack, is genuine atmosphere and world building. There's so much that you can imply about this world and about the universe that these characters are living in without needless exposition. And obviously, this franchise would later build on more of those ideas and things would change. Aliens is much more of a straight up action movie. Alien 3 pulls back into being a very one location, one alien, much more dour and depressing. And then Alien Resurrection, completely absurdist schlock. And then obviously Prometheus and Alien Covenant, Ridley Scott getting back in the directorial reins. Like it's a franchise that feels very different throughout its history, and I'm excited to see what Romulus has to offer. But this movie, what makes it so special is the small scale storytelling, that the world building, a lot of it can be implied solely through the visuals and what you as an audience member are piecing together in your head. And there, like I said, there are still scenes in this movie that horrify me to this day. I love the third act sequence of this movie. It's so suspenseful, it's heart pounding, keeps you on the edge of your seat, and there is a reason why this movie is regarded as one of the greatest horror films of all time. So have you seen Alien? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. Obviously, this is one of my favorite films of all time, and there is very good reason for that. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.